when it comes to criticizing Eliot Wolf, and we'll get into that once the season's over, and I've maintained all along, like I need to see the full 17 games. I mean, because who knows who pops down the stretch. It's not unusual for, when a new coaching regime takes over, you have, especially on offense, you have an entirely new system and a bunch of new coaches. It's not unusual at all for it to take time, at least like half a season before things really start to gel for people. And so, I need to see the finished product. To me, this is the most disappointing aspect of Wolf's tenure to this point, his one offseason. The draft, I know a lot of people, and Nick, I know we're of similar minds on this. I mean, people are losing their minds about the draft. Again, outside of the first round, I don't expect much from draft picks. You would like them to grab some sort of role, and you could say a guy like Polk hasn't. But right. I still think the potential is there for this draft, and I'm not judging them off of a half a season, 3/4 of a season. I still think, well, obviously, Maye, I still think Polk is going to be a good player. Layden Robinson is a good player. I think Caden Wallace is going to be a serviceable, at least backup swing tackle in this league whenever he gets on the field. Consistently, Baker was a pick I wouldn't have made. A guy like Marcellus Dial, good special teams type guy late in the draft. That's what you're hoping for. Joe Milton, I think, has a lot of potential and could be a future lottery ticket for the Patriots down the line. So I'm fine with the draft. I'm not overreacting to the draft. But the free agency, Nick, I didn't mind their approach. I know a lot of people are up in arms. They should have spent more. They should have done X, Y, and Z. I get all that, but I didn't at the time. And we, with the benefit of hindsight, we can all be correct. But, after seeing what they did, I didn't mind it. I thought that it was very much like something like Belichick would have done, going into 2001. After he came on in 2000, they won 5 games. They went to free agency and they found a bunch of like role type players, under the radar, cheaper, that sort of thing. And right. I thought that's what the Patriots were doing. They were like, they weren't sure about like Jonah Williams, who hasn't played for the Cardinals, as sort of the big quote unquote offensive tackle in this free agent class. And they identified people, and I didn't disagree with it. Like KJ Osborn has been a good, productive number 3 wide receiver in this league. Chuks Okorafor on film showed that he did have the potential to play left tackle in this league. Armon Watts was a defensive tackle who, they just brought him in to be sort of like a third defensive tackle, help against the run type of guy. Didn't disagree with that. Taki's been a good linebacker in this league, has been with a lot of the coaches in Cleveland that came here. Brissett, I think he did about what they thought he was going to do. I mean, maybe he was a little bit worse throwing the ball, but then again, look at the protection. It was the first month of a brand new scheme for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's fair.
He was sort of a sacrificial lamb. I mean, remember, he has delivered 2 of the Patriots' victories so far. Like you said, Gibson, I think he's been really good. Hawkins, that was one of those under the radar type of things where they're like, all right, well, we think we identified a guy who can be better here than he has been before. And Hooper, I think, has been good. I just think that, none of those guys, that they're going to get to the end of the season, and Osborn, Okorafor, Watts, and Leverett aren't going to be on the team anymore. There's nothing else you can say is other than that's just a failure. It's a failure. Those guys needed to help this team. They're veterans. They're professional, and that they're not even on this team anymore. Some of them, like Leverett, is circumstances. I think that when they signed him, they saw a guard deficit, but then they got Layden Robinson, and Michael Jordan started off pretty good. And so, he got passed a little bit by some other people, which they didn't foresee, but they needed it, that they didn't spend a lot of money on those guys they really needed them to grab roles on this team, and they just didn't. And so, to me, that's a fail from Eliot Wolf.
I've seen comments under your thing saying, like, fire Eliot Wolf. I'm going to start with my criticism of Eliot Wolf, all right? So I can be fair. The draft, I think much more in hindsight. Now, to be fair, we, during our draft show with John, and talked about how the Patriots didn't go wide receiver and tackle with their first 2 picks, or their picks after Drake. You know, it would be very, very hard to justify, and the fan base would have burst into flames spontaneously.
We were waiting for like a box safety to come off the board for them next, and we were just going to like lose our mind. Yeah, right.
Exactly. So we were all of the mindset that it had to be tackle receiver. You can argue that they should have been more aggressive in trading up for a tackle once that run started, right? You could argue that. You could also argue that, you know, the Ladd McConkey thing is what it is. I still don't think, especially like with hindsight, obviously, he's done way better downfield outside than I expected him to. And I will 100% own up to that. But I don't think anybody was pounding the table for Ladd McConkey over Jalen Polk when he was picked. There may have been some, and if you did, congratulations, that's awesome. But one, we don't know what Polk can be at the pro level. Like, let's at least give him till next offseason once he understands the playbook and doesn't have to think he can actually play. But also with the size, the downfield ability where he shined in college, he seemed like a better fit with Drake Maye, right? But this year, I would say hopefully you can fill your holes in free agency and go with more of a best player available approach. Because you have holes, but you have so many holes at this point. It's just like, get difference-making players. I don't care if it's a tight end versus a receiver. I don't care if it's a defensive tackle versus an edge rusher. Get guys who are going to make an impact week in and week out, right? So that's why I think their draft strategy needs to change. In terms of free agency, this is where I'm just like, I don't really know what people wanted because the class was very shallow. They weren't a good enough team to just pay guys whatever they wanted to make them come over here. And also, I didn't think there were that many players that really fit considering age. And it seemed like they wanted to trend a little bit younger in most positions, right? So those are my criticisms. Need a different draft strategy in this offseason. As long as you finish strong, capitalize on all the money that you have, right? This is the year to burn some cash because you have way too much of it. You got to spend it somewhere, even if it means overpaying for players at the top of the market. I understand the frustration with this last offseason because there wasn't a whole lot they could do, and the draft picks haven't worked out the way you were hoping. I completely understand the disappointment. Let's pump the brakes, right? This is Eliot Wolf's first year as a general manager. The draft wasn't really great, you got to admit, but he nailed the quarterback, got a good special teams player towards the end of the draft. And now we're hoping in this offseason he really can show what he has by filling holes with what we expect to be some premium players on the market, and then maybe learning from last draft and doing better this time around. So I just don't see the sense in just getting so worked up about Eliot Wolf after one offseason where you literally just wipe the organization clean in terms of like coaches and personnel people. Like, it was a very different structure that people didn't really know whether they should buy into or not. A lot of the guys they brought in knew they were coming into a rebuilding organization and they wanted to help reset the culture, right? This offseason, if he blows it, he doesn't sign anybody, he doesn't compete for Trey Smith, he doesn't compete for T. Higgins, all those things, yeah, I'll be right with you. I'll be pissed.
Right.
Because you have too much money. I don't care if you have to overpay. If they're players with a positive track record, do what you got to do. Because you got a lot of holes to fill on this roster. You can't go into the draft with every premium position just a gaping hole. So yeah, that's basically my point. Next offseason, yeah, it's going to be a lot more intense because I think they're going to have more of an ability to acquire players.
Totally.
But like this list, I'm sorry, most of these players are depth pieces. The only ones you thought were going to start for you were Jacoby Brissett at the beginning of the year and Chuks Okorafor. Everybody else was supposed to be rotational players. I don't think this is the year to condemn Eliot Wolf. Let's wait till this offseason and see what the guy does.
So I think that what really kind of put the blame here on Wolf, if you will, is the burn some cash comment from Gerard Mayo. Because look, they really didn't burn a ton of cash on this list. And would you have
on the roster? That's really where all the money went. Yeah.
Would you have first and foremost, would you as fans have rather him throw a bunch of cash at a bunch of free agents and have half of them to 3/4 of them not work out, and then you have a bunch of guys tanking your salary cap, and then Wolf's going to get in trouble for that too? So that's one aspect of this. The second one is this list obviously doesn't show the Christian Barmore extension, the Kyle Duggar extension, Hunter Henry re-signing, Kendrick Bourne re-signing, even not Taki, what's his name? Jelani Tavai, those guys, where they did use this offseason to sort of build out the core and build the inside of this roster.
Would you agree with Bill Simmons when he said last night, if you take out Drake Maye, that Eliot Wolf gets an F- for this first year?
F- is strong. I mean, this free agent class is a dud, and the rest of that draft class obviously it's not a disaster, but heading in that direction, trending towards.
Again, also factor in that he liked the offensive line and promoted the offensive line, and he talked about the culture and like this whole culture thing about how they're going to be different. So I'm including all that. F- might be strong. F+ would be probably.
Yeah, I was going to end like D- like which
somewhere
I cannot wait. By the way, that you just baited me into something that happened a month ago, possibly happening again on the radio tomorrow. Callahan pivots and give Wolf a D-. There we go. And I'm just like not tweeting anymore. But hopefully we have.
Oh, stop! You love it. You go on 98.5. You're on every week with those.
Guys. It's great fun. This is the business we've chosen, and stuff happens. And it was a bad. It was a bad day. Now I remember why that day. But you handle it better. And anyway, look, this is. Just to say, as far as the draft class goes, like free agency, yes, give Eliot a D for the free agent class. Full stop. There it is. Put it in red ink. Put it on the radio. Put it in TV. I don't care. Put it in space. The draft class, like any draft class, I want to give 3 years before giving a final grade on that. And this is not, too scared to say something. He doesn't want to criticize. Well, if this is categorically, GMs, head coaches, quarterbacks, draft classes get 2 to 3 years in my book before we give a passing grade. And you see quarterbacks all over the league who we wrote off, I did included Geno Smith, Sam Darnold having a revival.
Yeah.
Maybe that happens with Caden Wallace, Jalen Polk, or it doesn't. I don't know. But I'm going to wait to find out is my point.
All right. So we'll wait and see. I didn't want to bring up a sore spot. Just surprised. Very unlike you. And the Eliot Wolf thing, it's a whole different hour podcast we could do.
Yeah.
Because he's had an interesting year in terms of touting how the team was going to approach things and this collective. And now, how much he is a fascinating figure heading into year 2. Like, again,
yeah, totally.
Mayo and Wolf,
a criticism. It's not.
I can't wait to see I don't think he's going to get fired either. I don't think the Graf's got the guts to do that. But how he responds here in year 2 is going to be fun to watch because they're going to have a lot of money again. They have a young star-ish quarterback. Now build around him. You have to.
Totally support it. I mean, Drake Maye is the most valuable and the best performing member of that organization. Certainly relative to expectations.
Yeah.
And everyone loves to say this, but in this case, it's absolutely true. It's not even close.
No.
And you could argue best public speaker and leader, given he's out doing the press conferences every single week. And you're like, did he just come out of a factory and know how to say the right cliches and give it enough thought and just kind of like support the team and do all this? And the kid's 22. So
yeah, he also seems unfazed by it all. Again, maybe that'll change. But first reaction is like he's the guy in the pickup truck who's the quarterback who's not fazed by it, which for this rebuild is going to be important.
Yeah, it's a great sign for their future. A bad commentary on their present.
Support us and sign up at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS or download the app today and use code CLNS at prizepicks.com/CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5.